everybody, and welcome to our conservation doubleheader of Profiles in Canada. I'm Kayla Moniz, and we are here today with a very special guest. We have Sean Southey, the Chief Executive Officer of the Canadian Wildlife Federation, whose headquarters are but a stone's throw from the Third Canada and Voyageur Council. The mission of the CWF is to conserve and inspire the conservation of Canada's wildlife and habitats for the use and enjoyment of all. I can't think of a better guest to have for our series where we meet Canadians who use their talents for the greater good. So thank you very much, Sean, for joining us today.
It's a real pleasure, Caleb. I am a huge fan of the scouting movement, and I believe that falling in love with nature is the way to change the world. And there's no better way to fall in love with nature than to be a scout.
Well, I assure you, yeah, we agree with that completely. So why don't we start by discussing the CWF itself? Why is the work that you do so meaningful?
So we are one of the only homegrown, all Canadian national NGOs. We are 62 years old. We work across Canada. We have almost 100 staff who are committed to ensuring that Canadians understand nature, love nature, that they have a conservation ethic. We work to inspire every Canadian to be part of the conservation movement. And we really want to protect the species that matter and the places they live. And if we look at those two first parts of the strategic plan, that vision we have of connecting everyone to nature, creating this conservation ethic, what I call a culture of conservation, and this inspiring every Canadian, it means you need to invest and think deeply about partnerships and youth and getting people outside.
So then why is it so important for young people to get outdoors?
So we can do conservation. We as a global community have proven we can do conservation.
Hmm.
We can get Kalim on a bike. We can we can protect an ecosystem. We can save a species. But the world is complicated,
Hmm.
and the types of decisions we need to make now are more than one issue at a time. Getting Caleb on a bike is not enough. It's the career you choose, the way you shop, the way you vote. These are the issues, the ways we really impact the world. And it turns out that when people are connected to nature, um, in a trusted environment with people they respect and love, can be a parent, it can be a grandparent, it could be someone from your church, your mosque, your temple, or it could be your scoutmaster. Turns out these repeated exposures to nature are what connect us there. And I'm not afraid to use the word love. When we are in that context of connection, we love. And then it changes everything. And frankly, we need to change everything.
Well, of course, Scouts Canada is an organization that prides itself in exposing youth to the natural world. You're also a leader in conservation education, Sean, and are actually chair of the International Union for the Conservation of Nature's Commission on Education. I wonder what advice you might have to our volunteers or scouters who are interested in bringing nature closer to their scouting youth.
Well, when I became the elected chair, it's a pro bono job, a voluntary job I've done for the last 8 years. And
Mm.
IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, is the biggest family of groups that care about conservation. There's 1,500 member organizations made up of NGOs or governments or cities or indigenous peoples groups, and there's 19,000 volunteers who spend their time. There's 1,000 staff, and I chair one of the 7 commissions.
Mm.
Really early in my term, we decided to double down to really recognize this power of connecting people to nature. So we created a program which we called Nature for All. And if your team or your scout leaders or your chaperones in nature, go to natureforall.global, natureforall.global. We have curated now 620 organizations who are committed to this work, and they're sharing all the different ways you can do this. I'll give you two examples of the type of ideas that are in there that a scout leader might play with. Is that the right term, scout leader?
Scout. Yeah,
Scouter,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So we have a partner in Colombia, in Latin America, and they are a group of grandmothers. And these grandmothers realized that their grandchildren were not getting as connected to nature. So
Hmm.
they learned about their environment. They learned about the trees and the animals and the wildlife, the grasses, and they take their kids out regularly, their grandkids out regularly in nature. Turns out intergenerational connection is really powerful.
Hmm.
Program was so effective that all the grandfathers wanted to join, and it's still called Outdoor Grannies, but grandfathers help. And the reason it's useful for a scout leader is you can go on this Nature for All site and you can find the methodology and approach and how they trained. And maybe there's an opportunity to get some grandparents out
Hmm.
with your scouting team to look at that intergenerational dimension. Turns out grandparents and grandkids are a really special connection. Another example is here, right here in Canada. I love this story. It's with, I believe, my counterpart. We'll talk about this maybe on your double header series because it's a Parks Canada story.
Lovely.
I love learn to camp. Okay.
Hmm.
So we have many new immigrants to Canada. Somewhere between 500,000 and 1.25 million new Canadians come every year. That's
Yeah.
a huge number.
Yeah.
Part of the reason they come is because of our nature and our wildlife and our mountains and our streams, but often they're afraid of it or uncomfortable. And so, how do you get a new person to Canada to not be afraid of nature, to deal, well, what's a mosquito? How do I start a fire? How do I book a ticket to get into a camp? And Parks Canada created this program called Learn to Camp, where you can go and in a nice controlled environment, learn to camp. And once you've learned your comfort level, then you go out into nature. And I think there are hundreds of stories that different groups are doing. And we as a global community and IUCN are trying to find the consistent bits that can help others have new ideas. We have a discovery zone on that webpage that has curriculum, case studies, drawings, comics, podcasts, anything you might want to do to connect people to nature.
That's fantastic. I will say Scouts Canada actually also offers a very similar program, and we've seen great success. So often there is that trepidation maybe of getting outdoors, but it's obviously so core to our programming. So thank you for your insights there.
Well, and I will, Caleb,
Yeah.
make this formal offer now. Let's have Scouts Canada join the Nature for All movement. It's
Yeah.
we one of our most fun things we did is we sent a whole team to the Global Scouts Jamboree,
Amazing.
and my team came back so inspired. I have never seen a group of, I thought sending out for 10 days with kids in a tent, they would come back exhausted. They came back vibrant and enthusiastic and in love with what scouts do.
That's
Part of why
perfect.
I'm talking to you today is I've seen not just the difference it makes on young adults, young children, but also on those that interact with them.
That's amazing, Sean. Well, after this interview, perhaps, this will happen. I do want to quickly touch upon something you mentioned earlier. You mentioned the work that CWF does with Indigenous communities. I wonder if you might provide some comment there about why that's so important, obviously, for your mission, for your mandate.
So we're the Canadian Wildlife Federation. We have this responsibility, this desire to connect every Canadian to nature and to protect all the places that matter and the species that live in them. You cannot do that in Canada unless you do it hand in hand in deep partnership with all communities. And of course, special in that mosaic is our Indigenous communities across Canada. It's not easy because you have more than 600 groups, each with their own priorities and their own language and culture. This is not a homogeneous community, it's very heterogeneous. So we tend to do our work really community by community. When we work on, we protect rights of ways around sort of say hydro lines. We help get the right grasses there so that monarchs and other endangered species can grow. We would always do that in concert and in partnership with the communities around. We do a lot of work on mapping the freshwater passages across Canada, all the rivers that flow across Canada. That map behind you is actually a mosaic of rivers.
Yes.
We have a database of all of those rivers and all of the barriers, the culverts, the dams, the things that stop effective flow of wildlife across those habitats. And we look to remove them so that fish and other species can live better. We do that in close concert with the indigenous communities and other communities around those sites because those are the people who are on the land. We're always very sensitive to whether it's settler or indigenous peoples, those who live on the land. The best custodians of nature are those people that love the land and are part of the land.
That's fantastic. Let's talk about then your own journey as a custodian of nature. I read that you have lived and worked in over 125 countries. Wow. Why is Canada so special to you, firstly? And then also, how did you find your own passion for the outdoors?
So one of the ways I've started every workshop I've run, almost every workshop I've run in the last decade, is I ask the group a simple question. When did you fall in love with nature?
Hmm.
Because I find the deepest likelihood, the most strong reason for you and I to be conservationists is because we had those early moments of falling in love. That's why for me, these scouts opportunities are so important because you're outside in nature, in a tent or walking with your friends. For me, I'm an immigrant to Canada myself. I moved here when I was 1 year old from South Africa. Both my parents were out of Zimbabwe and South Africa. And my dad was a professor at the University of British Columbia, or a student getting his PhD. And I would go out and I would, with my friends, make dams in the river and see if we could get the fish and the pollywogs and the different things to collect. And it was those hours and hours in nature with my hands dirty with my friends that started to make that connection. And I was very lucky in my career. I had some good mentors, got some good early jobs, but I always stuck to one thing. I always followed a career where I did what I believed in. And for me, being a conservationist is a critical part of who I am. Now, I've done that in many different ways. That's what's beautiful about the modern world. I was an economist by training, and
Hmm.
I did 5 years as an economist. I've worked in policy, I've worked in programming, I've worked in, protecting grasslands in Mongolia, protecting fish in Ghana, protecting species of in Belize, elephants in
Wow.
Tanzania, cross river gorillas in Nigeria and Cameroon. The thing that connects all those things is that love for nature.
Hmm.
So as people are looking at careers now, and of course most scouts will go on to careers,
Hmm.
my only deep encouragement is find what you love, recognize there's many, many, many different ways to do environmental work, to do conservation work, and to know that in the modern age, you'll probably jump around from job to job to job. And don't be afraid of doing the jobs that you love.
That's some great advice. I will ask then, just drawing on that, you've had some incredible experiences, clearly. Why come home? Why come back to Canada?
It's a great question. I um, spent 22 years of my life based out of New York and Africa and living in Egypt and India and different places. and worked very closely with many Canadians, but the bulk of my work was looking at international environmental work,
Mm,
helping Africa, Asia, Latin America, the Caribbean. I think I'm now 60, just over 60, and after COVID especially, I had this calling to come home and help learn more about and do what I can to help this beautiful country we live in. For me, Canada has always had one of the best reputations of being a place of wondrous nature. But like anywhere, it's fragile. And with climate change and invasive species and
mm,
habitat fragmentation and human encroachment into different landscapes, this beautiful country is a little at risk. And so
mm.
I came back to do my bit, and I was very lucky to join this incredible team at CWF. Um, it's nice to be part of a group of 100 plus individuals who are all connected to the same mission. And the fact that half of our portfolio is education and that in working with young people is part of what CWF is makes it easy to be here and makes it an organization I'm proud to be part of.
That's great, Sean. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I have one last question for you. For our young people across the country who might be watching this, they might be looking for ways that they can give back to nature or they can join the conservation movement. What advice would you have for young people who are looking to make a difference on the natural environment in a positive way?
So first of all, I think we have to recognize that governments are important, NGOs are important, but really it's only when we all act do we make a difference. So first thing I'd want is everyone to know what they do makes a difference.
Mm,
Um, but we're better when we're together. And this is where I love these collective action, these coming together. I I'm guessing that many people in the scouting movement are pretty connected to nature, to recycling, to conservation. It's part of the reason you became scouts is because you have this moral compass and this desire to serve and this commitment to community. So I am thinking a little on the fly here, but I would challenge each scout to take a friend outside.
mm,
The more we can get people into nature with their friends, the better. So while you go out in your troop and spend time with the troop, think of how you can get more people outside. And then think of what can you do together. Is there a project you can do in your community? And so much work needs to be done, whether it's picking up trash, whether it's volunteering at a local NGO, whether it's creating media content like you're doing today, Caleb. How do you get out there, share the word, build the movement, create a community of people that want to keep beautiful Canada beautiful?
That's fantastic, Sean. Well, thank you again so much for joining us. It has been a real pleasure speaking with you. And thank you for the good work that you're doing with the CWF. To everybody at home, thanks for joining us on this first part of our conservation doubleheader. The next episode with Andrew Francis, the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer at Parks Canada, and a Troop Scouter with the 17th Ottawa. It's going to come out in just a few days, so you don't want to miss that. So thanks everybody at home for joining us. Thank you, Sean, so much for your insight. And I look forward to seeing you then. Cheers.
Thank you. And let me just close, Caleb, and say
Please, please.
if the local scout group wants to come and visit us here, wants to take us
Lovely.
out somewhere, please reach out and encourage them to get in touch and we'll organize something together. That would thrill me.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you for your generosity then, Sean. It's a pleasure.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you, everybody.